Right, good morning. Welcome to this morning's Regulation Hearing Committee meeting for the 4th of September. I will then ask Councillor Edge if you would like to give the opening.
Thanks, Chair. Whakakata hou ki te uru, whakakata hou ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai. I he aki ana ti atakura, I toi I huka, I hohu, ti he mahi.
Just want to make sure that everybody is aware. Our meeting has been recorded and that will be being processed from now on. And obviously we don't have speakers here because the rooms are live. So certainly we've got a quorum present, so I declare the meeting open. We have obviously Councillor Pauling online, and I have received nothing from Councillor East. So let's leave that. Hopefully he's on his way. Does anybody have any conflicts with today's agenda?
So I'm going to just note it's not a conflict necessarily, but I want to note that the all of the members who are submitting in terms of item 7.3 have brought concerns to me as a constituency councillor. I have not provided advice but I'm just raising in this that I have given to me. I'm not going to declare a conflict between make on this meeting.
Thank you very much for that. No other conflicts of interest people wish to raise? If there isn't, we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the petition, public forum, deputations and petitions. I haven't been advised of any. Nobody's in the room, so that takes us to agenda item 5, extraordinary and urgent business. Does anybody have any extraordinary urgent business? Nothing's been brought to my attention. Okay. Takes us to agenda item 6, which is the unconfirmed minutes of our meeting the 7th of August 2024. Are there any matters of accuracy relating to those, and noting that they were circulated? If there isn't, we've got the recommendation up there on the screen. The Regulation Hearing Committee confirms the minutes from the Regulation Hearing Committee meeting held on the 7th of August. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Edge. Seconder. Councillor Davies. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Takes us on to our report items 7.1. Yeah, notice there's a slight change in the way that the agendas are being presented. With a division around actual recommendations and the hearings in the second table. So there's the first 10.1 around the committee resolution status report. Got Aurora sitting there at the end and Oliver sitting up here. Does anybody have any questions or clarification? They look pretty straightforward. They're all green. So therefore I will move the recommendation there. That's
One question.
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chairperson. In regards to the secretarial note that was put into the minutes around those concerns that I had last time, would that feed through somehow to this, or does that just get completely lost in terms of it's now in the minutes, it's been passed and move on?
okay, no, I'll address that in the first instance anyway. Probably appropriate we do it here. I was wondering if I was going to do it at the end, but I will do it here. So the note is in the minutes around how we close off that feedback loop and give councillors particularly and others obviously who want to access the agendas and minutes an opportunity to see what the decisions are how they were made and why they were made. So this goes some way towards answering your concerns that you raised at the previous committee meeting. I've suggested, and Laura is comfortable with it, obviously legal is working with us as well, is that we actually put in another column in the next status report, around the hearing status report. When it's green and the decision's been made, we'll put a column which actually takes to a link to the decisions that are made. And then that's complete transparency. So that would help people understand the explanation of them around why a decision maker or a panel arrived at that decision. Is there anything you'd like to say along?
Yeah, I think that that's probably the most efficient way to do it, and gives a direct link to the full Section 42A report, which justifies the entire decision making and why the decision maker or panel arrived at the decision that they did, and then people can go through that if they would like.
And just one last thing, does that still address the potential for the end, once the decision's been made? I don't want us to lose sight of, we're delegating those decisions, and at my level, after these decisions have been made, I'd still like to see, a year or two down the track, going back and saying, how's that decision actually applied in the real world? I'm just picking some up, I don't think, at some point I'd like us to get to that stage. I don't know if we're there yet, but at some stage I'd like us to. I know we've got a lot going on, but I know we need to get to that stage so that we can actually have almost a bit of accountability for our decision makers, just so we know and we're comfortable that what they've made from a decision is actually working in the real world.
Could I just answer that as well? Would you like?
Yeah.
So that's not what we've just suggested, and what I've suggested, and it goes somewhere to start. Doesn't mean to say that's the end of it. I think that there needs to be perhaps a paper brought back to this committee, or maybe the whole council actually, to understand how conditions are monitored when, and it's the consents compliance thing. And I mean, maybe it's even a discussion that you could bring in later to. No, it's not a regulatory hearing one that's coming next week. So it's something that we could even perhaps bring into that committee as well, around that understanding. Or would you like to add anything here?
Yeah, I think that the presentation and papers that are coming to the regulatory committee in the next coming weeks will cover off. I'm like getting my new committees all mixed up. That starts bringing together the link between consents and compliance, and we are doing some work to look at how our feedback loop for how conditions that we put on through the consent process actually play out over the next few years. So I would suggest that that's probably
that sounds good
in the works, but I'll take that back to the compliance manager and make sure that we are covering that point.
And I like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming?
Yeah, just adding to that and just supporting what Dion is saying. I think I have suggested a few times now that the old regulatory briefings that we had last term could be brought into this committee. I know that we've got the RDC, the Regional Delivery Committee, that will do the overview of how things are going. But I think the regulatory briefings that we were having last term were quite specific, and they were good. That's my suggestion, that gets added to this committee over time. So I quite like what Dion was saying, and I think that's another alternative if we could explore that. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe that could be a suggestion on next week's regional delivery paper as well. So Councillor East.
Sorry, I'm running a little late this morning. Perfect. I'd just like to endorse some of the comments I've heard already around expanding the consenting workload that we've got. just how many days some consents have been in, consents of note, and yeah, I think just more along the lines of how we're going against statutory timelines with a number of consents. So over a period of time, I'd like to sort of see a dashboard develop that gives us some information on the status of a lot of our consents and just how well we are tracking or whether there are still issues in keeping up with the workload that we're getting.
Thank you for that. Right, we've had a bit of a good discussion going from
Thank you.
the regulation hearings and dealing with the notes. So we'll just go back to the recommendation for 7.1. And I'll just going to put that up there. Notes the status of previous resolutions provided in the Regulation Hearing Committee Resolutions Report, 4th of September 24. You'll have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor. Councillor. Councillor Hughes. All in favour? Against? So that's carried. Thank you very much. So that takes us on to the second part of what we have a status report. This is around the consent hearing status report, 4th of September. Yeah, does anybody have any questions around those? Noting that we've quite straightforward, I would have thought. Nobody's got any questions? I just have one, probably straightforward, really. I probably could have really looked it up, but the hearing, where hearings are not required and decisions made on papers, there's still a statutory timeframe, as I understand it, for those to be made. Can you just tell me what that is?
So if no hearings required, I believe, but it's been notified, the same timeframes apply. In terms of the notification period, and then I believe we've got 100 days for that decision on paper rather than the hearing, which is 140. Yeah.
So that's obviously quite a additional time length for those ones that go through that process. Councillor East?
Yeah, I noticed that one or two consents, the actual start of the hearing is delayed. Where does that sort of delay factor into the timeline, statutory timelines? Does it only statutory timeline only start once the hearing has actually commenced? Or I've seen some that are delayed 2, 3, 4 months before they even get there.
Yeah, so that does happen. And we do have mechanisms in the Act that allow the independent commissioners to start or stop the clock, essentially is what it's called. And that's normally comes from off the back of a request from the applicant. And generally it's to put together further evidence before it's heard. So what often happens in that case is they take stock of what comes through in submissions and what people are concerned about, and then try and address that before getting to the actual hearing. So while it can add an additional delay to get to the hearing space, what it can mean is that the actual hearing goes through a lot smoother because some of those preliminary matters are ironed out, and that's behind essentially before the hearing proceedings. But the RMA does allow for commissioners to put those timeframe holds in place to allow that to be worked out.
Oh, I've seen the odd occasion where a hearing's been delayed because the commissioner is unavailable at the time, or some delays actually getting going to that. Does that happen often? And if it does, how does that reflect in the statutory timelines?
Generally, what we do is we work through and look at commissioner availability before we bring a recommendation to this group. And there have been times where a commissioner's indicated that they are not available, and in which case we've appointed or brought a recommendation to the panel for additional appointment. So we do try and not delay things. because a commissioner's not available, or put on a different commissioner.
Okay, thank you. I think we're just, in the interest of time, we'd like, move on to the recommendation there. Others going to. Notice of the resource consent application hearings provided, there was consent hearings notice report. That we're noting it, sorry, as at the 4th of September. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Edge, okay. Seconder. Councillor Staggs, thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. So that moves us on to decision items, rest of our decision items, 7.3. On your paper 20, pages 20 to 23. Now we're looking to appoint a hearing commissioner to decide 6 applications here that have come in for road medals. The recommendations from staff is that we appoint Paul Rogers as that commissioner with a delegated and delegates his responsibilities, functions, powers and duties to deal with preliminary matters here and decide the applications. So just note that this is a joint application between us and the TA. The proposals there outlined in point 3 and the types of consents required is in point 4. And it's a relatively short duration consent of 7 years. The application was limited notified, 10 submissions was received and 5 wish to be heard. Yes, I've got you, Councillor Swiggs. So the TA is Christchurch City Council. So staff have outlined previous panels that Mr. Rogers has sat on, particularly for Environment Canterbury, and other has sat on, and the reasons that support his recommendation here. Yeah, I've got 2 people up, so Councillor Swiggs first and then Councillor Pauling.
Hi, I'm going to try and be not the issue here, but more about why are we not looking at doing a panel for this? I would have liked to see that.
The reasons for not putting a panel on for this is because it's a joint hearing. City Council also said they're happy with 1 panel member. The commissioner that we've recommended here indicated that the number of submitters is quite small and the scope of issues is actually quite narrow with this because an existing environment question that an existing environment background there where they are seeking an expansion, but it is already an operating quarry. I did question this with staff when this was put through, and essentially that was the indication from the commissioner is they prefer because it does have those factors sitting behind it. It is more efficient to deal with it with a single commissioner.
Yeah, I understand that. I think we have talked about this maybe about a year ago. I think when we come to these particular areas with the eyeballs and what's going on in that area, we did say at some stage that these consents would primarily be going through a panel rather than just one consent holder. So when I read this and hearing that that's fine, they don't have to deal with what we have to deal with. I'm still keen to see at least 2 members on this as commissioners hearing it. And even I had a dream the other night after I read this paper of me sitting there and listening to this thing. I mean, well, I am biased. Well, I'm not biased, but I make decisions based on the information in front of me, but I don't have my ticket. But this also raised the question around councillors being on hearings and whatnot as well. But that's a different story. But what I am very keen to see at least 2 people on these particular matters. And I do recognise what you've said, but it's just I'm stuck in the mud on that one.
Can I just add that, and you were at that meeting around the audit and risk where the hearings policy review had a little asterisk beside it. So that
10 years old.
something that at that meeting suggested that perhaps might be appropriate but for this committee to come to. There hasn't been a change of the hearing policy to suggest your thought that in fact there had been a decision made around that. I don't recall it.
No, it was a
Would have to be an official decision. But it's certainly something that if we're looking at reviewing it, which I think it does need to be reviewed and it's timely to do it, it's something that we could consider. So, yeah, Councillor Pauline?
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, I'd support what Dion's saying, actually. I think we've raised issues about these consents in the past and this issue in particular. It doesn't sound like a policy matter to me, because we're asking the hearing commissioner what they think. Shouldn't we decide what we think is appropriate? I know that we've asked his advice, but actually we should be going, this is what we think needs to happen on these ones. So I would support Dion in asking for another commissioner to work alongside the one that we're putting forward. I think that makes sense. But that's just a statement. Sorry, I had a question. Just in terms of Mr. Rogers, has he worked with the quarry industry before? Has he been a consultant to them at all in the past?
I don't know the answer to that. Sorry, Councillor Pauling.
He's worked, he was sat on the panel for the Taggets earth moving, which was around the racecourse one that was declined in Rangiora.
Yeah, we have used him for quarrying commissioner work before.
Oh,
but I believe the question was around, has he worked
Apologies.
as a consultant? Yeah. So he's indicated that he doesn't have any conflict of interest for this matter.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Just wanted to check that. Thank you.
Councillor Reach?
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion that given the scale and the concern in our communities about these quarries and the size of this one in particular, the expansion being proposed and the quantity material being taken over the years is pretty significant. And I think, yes, I agree, a panel needs to be set up for this particular one. I do have concerns again about the notification process for this particular activity. Limited notification on something that we know has immense concern for our community.
Can I just remind Councillor?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and that is that.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna get to that, and I realise that it's the officer's decision. But I look at the next item 7.4 and the type of activity there, and it's a notified application. My query about the limited notification, given the issues related to dust, was the New Zealand Health Authority given the opportunity, were they part of the limited notification?
I don't think this is the forum to answer that question. So
I think it's important to understand our role here, to understand the role in deciding the section 95 notification report that is very much set out in legislation in the RMA. We don't have an opportunity to question that, and it's based on the rules and regulations and the RMA.
Chair, I just wanting to know, surely I can understand it's not going to affect my decision. And I can't affect that decision now because it's too late. I would like to query either that or we flag that and we raise it at the close of the meeting.
Well, you'll maybe come back to it. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor East, you had your hand up?
Yeah, look, I was just going to comment on the on the scope. We're here primarily to appoint a commissioner to this hearing. Do we as a committee have the ability to actually look at whether one or two commissioners, I appreciate we're here to appoint a commissioner, but do we have within our role, the ability to say, well, this is actually quite big, we think we might need two commissioners? Is that something that we can address?
You can absolutely request that we go back and look at appointing or bringing a recommendation back for a panel. I would just like to highlight that if that occurs with the time of the year, we are very pushed with capacity for commissioners. So it is likely that there will be a delay in scheduling hearing, particularly with this type of application, finding the available people right before Christmas to hold the hearing. It may be, it gets delayed till early next year. I will just flag that. But absolutely happy to look at additional panel members.
So can I just clarify that? That delay would be a cost to the organisation?
Yeah, it would be a time frame matter. Yeah.
Councillor, why don't you still have your hand up?
Yeah, kia ora. I just had another question. And it's about, potentially appointing another panel member. Is there, and I know it's tough with the capacity at the moment probably out there, but could we, if we did reconsider it, really look into that health sort of area and the impacts of dust? Because I am conscious of the Te Whatu Order statement that's been revised recently. So I'm sort of thinking that that's important in the assessment of these matters.
Just one comment on that is that the notification decision and the substantive decision will be made in line with our regional framework, and that is what we've got the scope to look at in the substantive decision making, and what the Commissioner will pick up and look at. And they have the ability to look at any relevant information. And I imagine that that will be tabled, or there's the ability to table that evidence at the hearing. But the matter for this committee is around who is the decision maker.
Quite personally, I'm going to put my view on the table. I think that I'm happy with just the one person for 5 submitters, and particularly in the context, this is going to be cost on the organisation. So I'm quite happy that the recommendation stay as they are. I am aware of the view around the table of panels. But I think it's something that perhaps address more future going forward. It's something that we could pick up quite quickly, particularly when the opportunity around a hearing policy review.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I just endorse your comments, and I think really we're here to make an appointment, and I certainly have confidence in the report that's been brought before us. I'm sure these sort of matters have been considered when a recommendation to this committee's been made. So, like Claire, I'm comfortable with the report.
Thank you.
It's a good question.
The last one, because we've got other bond breaches coming and one more decision to make.
I don't have a problem with the commissioner that we're putting forward. I don't have a problem. But I do just have a problem with these particular. It's not even the scale. It's actually small. Don't get me wrong. It is small, but it does have an impact on quite a few things out there. So I mean, I'm really torn around this because I don't want to load cost and time on. I'm very conscious from where I sit of this one commissioner versus actually having more on these and panel decisions. How fast can are there somebody that could just sit with this panel or with this commissioner to do these things? And you've raised a risk around timeframes. How real is that risk? How much are we talking about in terms of lost cost?
I don't have all of the information to hand to answer your question, but as detailed as I'd like to. But in general, we are getting a lot of capacity issues when we're looking for commissioners to appoint to work currently. And the indication that we are getting through from commissioners in general is that they are full for this year. This application was lodged last year, 23. So it will be to the end of its time period. The other thing to consider when we make recommendations as staff to this committee is around numbers of commissioners on panels, is the fair and reasonable test for essentially having a panel as opposed to a single commissioner. And while it is a contentious issue, or can be in the community, the rule framework and the application and activity that's been proposed and the number of submitters it is standard for us to put to this committee that matters are dealt with by a single commissioner. So it would be a change compared to what we consistently put. So there would be a question around the fair and reasonable test for on charging any costs. And that is on top of, if we go over timeframes, that is a cost on the council.
Thank you.
I'm proposing amendment.
I'm going to stop this discussion right now. Please just let me finish. I think that it would be very good if councillors could actually consider that this person that we've got here as a panel is the current presenter of the Making Good Management Decisions course. Should be able to do everything and understand everything and evaluate the evidence that's actually put in front of them, including the air consents and the discharges that councillors also here have main points of concern around. I really think that we are undermining our trust in the system here and hearing commissioners by questioning this for such a small, it's already an existing environment. And it is quite concerning to be having this discussion around this. Now, I'm going to put this to the vote. If it fails, it sits on the table. So that's going to be my.
I proposed an amendment before you said that. I don't think you can.
Has to be moved, seconded.
In the interest of time, in the discussion that we've had, there is obviously some concerns at the table. The recommendation is there. If it fails, it fails. It can be reconsidered by staff. It may come back exactly the same. It may not. Because my sense is, I'm not sure whether this is going to get over the line, so I'm going to put it and I'm going to move it. And I'll have a seconder, Councillor East. All those in favour?
Aye. I'm going to vote. Can I just speak very quickly? I'm going to vote in support. I don't actually have a problem with this commissioner. I think he can actually make some very good decisions here. I want my objection. Can I please make my objection noted around the single commissions and what they brought back? But I'll support this going through because I'm very conscious of this.
Verbally, I've heard East, myself, and Swigs. Councillor Pauling, yea or nay?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to support it too because I have no problem with Mr. Rogers. I was just asking if we could have another one, so it doesn't affect these resolutions. It was more if we wanted to move an amendment, but that's all right. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. Nay? Nays? Anybody know? Yes, it's of numbers. I'll move that as carried. Thank you.
Abstention.
Yes, and I think that's the word that's going to abstain. And we will note, I think probably a bigger question around the hearing policy.
Once you come back.
Yep.
I think, yeah, we should possibly talk offline about how that amendment was handled because that did not feel like that was good.
We'll talk offline then. We'll move on to 7.4 hearings commissioner.
Happy to move the recommendation.
I'll second this one.
Right now, does anybody have any questions of the paper, of staff regarding the paper? Councillor Edge, you alluded to something before and you got to.
No, it's been notified, public notified, so I'm satisfied.
There are no questions. You're going to move, Councillor Swiggs.
It's just.
Sorry, you're seconding it. He's just moved it, sorry. So he's moved it, Councillor Swiggs has seconded it. All those in favour, say aye. Any against? And that's carried. That's on to the next meeting and that will be applied. And then we will leave the Karakia open for the rest of the day. Thank you very much.